Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. I'm your DJ and host, Sam Wilson Jr., and I'm here to bring you the history genre of black music: gospel, jazz, blues, old school classic soul, old school hip hop, today's hip hop and R&B, Caribbean, Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Latina, blue-eyed soul, disco, go-go, line dances, and the Lost 45s. So come with me as I take you on to a trip to the history destination genre of black music, right now on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience. I'm Sam Wilson Jr., and I have a very special guest on my show. And this guy that I'm about to introduce to you is a jazz musician. He has toured with so many jazz musicians, as well as gospel groups and classic soul artists. Today, he has his own production company that does jingles called Hohl's Spectrum Productions. So please help me welcome to my Black Soul Music Experience podcast, Mr. Lou Hohl. Hi, Lou. How are you?
Doing great, Sam. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and you? Welcome to my podcast. It's a
Yes, sir.
pleasure
Thank
to
you.
have you. Pleasure to have you here, and a special shout out to Miss Janice Purnell, whom I have interviewed last season, season 3, who works for WFMP or World Music Productions. It's a
Right.
production company that has singers who sings movie themes, TV themes, and commercial jingles. So I'm
Absolutely.
very delighted and thankful that she recommended me to interview my guest today as we continue on with the subject on singers who does movies and TV themes. Because if your favorite TV show that you like has a TV theme song, you never know, that song may be played on the radio, become a top 10 hit on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts, or on the R&B soul black singles charts, or hip hop or jazz, just to name a few. So I'm very delighted to have Lou Hohl to be with me on my Black Soul Music Experience podcast.
I appreciate you inviting me, Sam. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You, you welcome. So let us begin, because America may not know who you are, or the world may not know who you are, but many people don't pay attention to behind the scenes. So when award time comes and we probably find out who did behind the scenes, you never know. So as us as consumers, we always would like to find out, as we pay close attention to the credits. And sometimes we don't usually do that. We just either take a remote control, or when we're in the movie house, we just leave and say, that's the end of the movie, time to go. But as a consumer, I look at everything from the beginning to the end. And that's me, is because I'm always trying to figure out what product were they on, whether it's albums or movies or TVs, etc. That's who I am, and that's how I do. So let us begin, shall we? Now, where were you born?
I was born in Santa Monica, California,
Oh, the West Coast. Oh,
West
okay.
Coast, Santa Monica, California, at St. John's Hospital.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Now, were your
yeah, by the
parents
water.
in the music industry, or did they had 9 to 5 day jobs?
I was adopted, so I was adopted by my mom and dad, Louis and Edith, and they kept me in the music industry because they knew that music was in my blood. It's funny that you would ask that question, because my biological father, Cass Preston, who I met in 2012, when I was 52, he played the trumpet for many years in Tucson. He started in his in his dad's jazz band. My grandfather played the tenor sax, and my uncle played the drums. So they had their own jazz band in Tucson for many years, and they were friends with Louis Armstrong as well. So my dad got a chance to, when he was 15, he got a chance to actually audition for Louis when they came over to the house. He used to go over to my grandfather's house. They used to take him to the airport when he would come into town. But my biological father, Cass Preston, he actually is a local celebrity there. He passed in 23, but at the age of 93. But he was the recipient of the Tucson Jazz Society's Lifetime Achievement Award, and he was the first recipient of that award. So when he passed, it was on the news, and it was a pretty big loss for all of us. He did a lot for the music industry out there and for jazz. And he was a singer. He could croon, and I have videos of him too. And if anybody wants to go on and actually see him, there's a video on the Tucson Jazz Society's website, and under his name, there's a link where you can watch a whole show they did on him, and he's singing and playing the trumpet there. So, and I think he was 82 when he did that. Yeah. So, yeah, he's been at it for a long time. My biological mother, extremely talented as well. Grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan. She was a classical pianist and was in the newspaper for winning competitions at the age of 12. She recently passed this year in April, actually, and I didn't know, but she was a producer as well. She worked at she worked at UC Berkeley, where she got her master's later on in life. She worked there, but she also produced a lot of plays as well. And I have a lot of her paraphernalia from, going out there, and friends of hers sending it to me after she passed away. So yeah, she worked. She was a musician, a pianist, very talented. And my biological father, again, he was a musician, but he worked a 9 to 5. To answer the question, he was a physical ed teacher for 30 years with the Pima County School District. So they were both very successful people.
Mhm. Well, my condolences goes out to you.
Thank
And
you.
when you mentioned Battle Creek, Michigan, I was thinking about the home of Kellogg's cereals that I usually have for breakfast in the morning.
Right. Hey, look, that sounds pretty good. Hey, can't
Yes.
beat that.
Hmm. Now, which high school did you go to?
I actually graduated from Junipero Serra High School, which is a was an all boys school at the time, Catholic school. It since turned into co-ed, but yeah, at the time I was there, it was all boys school, all boys high school. They're known for their sports, winning states in basketball and in football. Yeah, that's where I graduated in 1978.
Now, which college did you go to?
I went to West Los Angeles College, West LA, and I actually didn't continue. I actually started floating around as a musician. I didn't realize at the time that how important finishing my schooling was at that time. And I thought I could, try to do it my way. And so I kind of doubled and dabbled. I was out there. I met Marvin Gaye, hung out with him and his studio, practiced with the band, and did everything I could at that time to learn as much as I could in music. I went to school for 2 years there, but I did get just recently, back in 2014, I finished in here in Cleveland and got my trade degree. So I was happy about that. But yeah, trying to become you know a big time musician, or a someone who's recognized is not as easy, and sometimes it takes a little help, to get there. So, but I was with a lot of influential musical people there, so very happy about that. But everything happens for a reason, right?
Right. Now, what was your major in college? I know you didn't stay for the whole college term, but what was your major when you got in college?
Right, environmental science. I was very good. I was a straight A student. Environmental sciences, chemistry, and my minor was in music.
Mm. Now, who did you want it to be when you grow up?
I actually wanted to be a doctor, really. I wanted to be a doctor, and actually went into pre med my first year in college. But then that turned into environmental science. I also wanted to be as I started my musical career at the age of 6, and so on and so forth. As I started going on year by year, I I wanted to be a studio musician. So, and I think I did do some of that, but yeah. So, but I guess to answer the question, I wanted to be a doctor. Let's just leave it there.
Was being a musician or doing music compositions your calling?
Yes, I think Sam, that I loved to play songs that I had rehearsed and that I knew well. I felt very comfortable. I could play them well, and I could add lib to them. But I really think that for me, creating my own sound was more pleasurable, and writing was more pleasurable for me than just playing someone else's music. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you played some musical instruments, but how old were you when you started playing musical instruments?
I was 6 years old. I started off at the Kennedy School of Music in Hollywood. My mother used to take my sister and I there every weekend. She was in ballet, and I played the accordion. And got pictures of my sister and I when I was 6, and I think Lynn was 4. And yeah, started playing when I was 6 years old. Reading music at that time, right? Because we were in
Right.
competitions at the Ambassador Hotel. I won my first trophy there in competition in 1968 at the Ambassador Hotel, actually before they tore it down. So you know what happened there, but yeah.
Right. Now, before you played the real music instruments, because I know many of us when we're little, we started experimenting. If we didn't have the real music instruments, we would make up our own things. Now, weren't you one time experimenting using toy boxes or pots and pans or any utensils as musical instruments?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what I mean, most of us do, right? Just like you said. Um, you know, my mother used to have a cabinet with pots and pans that she would have just for me. So whenever something would come on television like Romper Room, I don't know if you remember that, but
Yes, I do.
yeah, I would pull those out and I would go at it. But I also remember my dad, Louis, had many friends who were jazz musicians, and we had a piano in the house. So the parallel between my adopted father and my biological father was so on point because my adopted father Louis, he had a collection of jazz albums that would make the jazz collector salivate. He had every album that you could think of, and I delved into that. But they would come over to the house and they would start playing jazz on the piano. They would start singing, and I would grab my little boxes that I had. Some of them had plastic in the middle of them too, and I'd get sticks and I'd sit there in the middle of the living room while these guys would be going at it, and I'd be going at it too. So
Mm.
I had a really beautiful musical upbringing and memories. And I really thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this, because not only is it a blessing for me to be able to think about those things and realize that they're important, and but it's also just a pleasure to be on your show today.
Well, thank you for the compliment. And, me growing up, even though I didn't have any drums or any musical instruments, my late father had a set of drums when he came home from the Korean War. That was his Christmas gift. So, me listening to music on YouTube, if I didn't have any instruments, I would use my fingers and I would tap it on the table. I would, you
Exactly.
know,
Right.
just just imagine, as they were
Yep.
drums. So you have to use your imagination or your creativity on how to come up with things. So, still up to this date, I still listen, even though I don't have the real instruments or, may have those instruments out of beat, but I can listen to it, by ear, and I would come up with something that will follow that on the way.
Nice.
Now, growing up, who were your favorite singers or musicians?
Um, I have kind of a long list here. Well, my favorite singers growing up, obviously, one all-time favorite was Aretha Franklin. Just every song that she came out with, I was at I was at the store in line, ready to buy it, ready to buy the 45. Yeah, I always kept up with all of her new releases, and it was something. Her soul, was just amazing. Ray Charles, James Brown, Dizzy Gillespie, just to name a few of the musicians who really, some of my favorite musicians. Yeah, at that time. At that time, yeah, as a kid, yeah.
Now, who were your musical influences that had inspired you?
Um, I would say first and foremost, it's a toss up. It's the Beatles. You know, I remember sitting down listening to their songs, just being, paralyzed listening to their music. James Brown, the Jackson Five, um, the soul that James Brown had, you know, the power of his horn section, which I actually got a chance to meet those guys and watch them in a session. It was a learning experience for me. The Jackson Five, Stevie Wonder, of course, Marvin Gaye, Bill Withers, and Bill Green, who actually I studied with Bill. He was the top woodwinist in the nation. He actually had first chair at the Academy Awards for many years, and played on many shows like Taxi and different sitcoms and things like that on television. I studied with Bill, so Bill was a big influence to me as well. Grover Washington, the Supremes, Curtis Mayfield, and Earth, Wind, and Fire, I would say. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Marvin Gaye earlier. Now, you got a chance to tour with Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. What was it like being on tour with Marvin and Stevie on stage as well as off the
Well,
stage?
let me just clarify something here. I wasn't on, say, tour with Marvin or Stevie. I actually played on stage with Stevie, standing right next to me. He was playing his harmonica. I was playing my flute, and this was at the Peruvian Club in Hollywood, California, for Marvin's big birthday celebration that they had, and he was performing all of his greatest hits. Um, and I played my flute. Stevie was standing right next to me, and it was an unbelievable experience. We were both playing back and forth. We were soloing, And I did travel with Marvin on his tour bus to the San Diego Jazz Festival back in 1978, but I did not play at that festival. I was there with the family. Um, and I knew everybody in the band by name and practiced with them as much as I could. Yeah.
Hmm. Now, as a jazz musician, who were some of the jazz musicians that you had toured with?
Well, as I said again, when you say tour, we're talking about not coming home. I don't remember ever leaving or being um, on tour that way. I've played at many venues here in Cleveland,
Hmm.
and I've played with people like David Thomas, Ed Ridley, Fred Wheat, who is the was the director of the Melting Pot Orchestra. David
Hmm.
Thomas played with Dizzy Gillespie, and he's played with some of the greatest players, jazz musicians. Ed Ridley is probably one of the best piano players here in Cleveland, and he's a teacher, and he plays at the Kane Park Jazz Festival every year. We did a CD together back in 2015. So I played with a lot of great musicians here, and that actually leads up to some of your other questions about what Whole Spectrum Productions is all about.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a few minutes. Now, before you was, musician on in session, were you doing radio jingles for a radio station? And if so, what was the name of the radio station that you did the radio jingles?
Right. I did a jingle for KACE Radio. KACE. KACE. KACE Radio in Los Angeles through a friend named Lisa Chapman, who worked at the station. And she mentioned my name to the program director. And I remember the jingle was for All Star Tires. And so I wrote the music and delivered the jingle and got paid. And I was so happy. It really made me feel good. And I actually had family members and friends who said, Lou, we heard your jingle on the radio, because everybody listened to the radio back in the day.
Hmm.
I think that was in the 80s, late 80s, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the 80s. But I actually, on the side, a friend of mine, we created Hole and McCaskey's In Company Creations. We wrote jingles for 7 Up, Bartles and James, Calvin Klein's, um, with some of the other ones, like Soda. And so basically, the music was written out. I had it written out, and we would go and sit with some of the top advertising agencies. So we went to a story here. We went to J. Walter Thompson and met with the creative director. And when we went into the room, a couple people stuck their heads in the door, because I guess they probably weren't used to seeing African American people in there a lot. So when we got in there, Ernie, we introduced ourselves, and we handed him we handed him the music to. It was called "The Real Uncola" was the name of the jingle we wrote for 7 Up, and
Hmm.
it's all copywritten and with the copyright office. But anyway, he got on his piano and he started playing it, and he started scratching his head, and he was like, "This'll work. This'll work." He goes. And the jingle went, 7 Up's the real one cola. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. 7 Up, real one cola. So that was the whole thing back then, that we kind of we wrote it and we handed it over to him. He loved it. At that time, though, we we our business sense wasn't there. Our creative sense was there, but business sense wasn't. But you know, I've been trying to knock that door down, Sam. I'm still at it.
Hmm.
Still
Yeah,
at.
yeah, because me growing up, when I was a messenger, I have delivered packages to some agencies. J. Walter Thompson, you just mentioned, you know, it's not that much hiring, especially people of color who may have some more ideas, especially to, back in the day, old fashioned things. And, maybe they can be used for something for like different shows. Like for example, when you have those products that sponsors your shows, every May we have all the networks, CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox. They will come to the NYC and they would do the upfronts, the new shows for the new fall season. What's something new? What's get renewed? What show is not coming back to the fall season? And it has to apply to the advertisers. They have to find out what show that fits the product for their shows. If any show that has like a controversial episode, it's up to the network affiliates. Either they can support it or they can pull out. You know,
Right.
as as a CBS employee, we get like standards and practices, products or some other things that needs to be reviewed. Will that product work for that show? Will that other product will work for something else, depending on the mature themes? And the list goes on and on and on. When you have new shows, it has to be tested in the commercial or production room. It's up to the CEOs. Will that fit? Will that show fit for that schedule? And as far
Right.
as the products is concerned, will that product fit for that show? Could it be aired for the family hour, the 8 o'clock, 8 to
Hmm.
9 o'clock hour, or will
Right.
it be used for something else? Because, like I said
Absolutely.
earlier, it's up to the network affiliates. Either they want to support the episode or they can just pull out or put something else on there. I know because I've been there many times. And once you
Wow.
get
Okay.
those products that needs to be, it has to be approved and ready to air on the air. Now, you had did some music for some gospel groups. What was it like doing music for gospel groups or choirs?
Right. So going over, some of the things that I had tried to put together today. When I toured with Michael Trammell and Blessed in 1982, my cousin Leslie Tucker Young, she sang with the group as well. She had a music degree from Pepperdine. A lot of the musicians in the band actually played. They were top. They were the top gospel musicians in Los Angeles at the time. They actually played with James Cleveland as well. But they played for Michael because Michael was so popular. And Michael and I were pretty close. We did a lot of things together. We were personal friends. And basically, I think when we toured, when I say touring, I we did go on trips and faraway trips to play at places with him. And I basically helped to do a lot of the horn arrangements for the songs. I played the guitar as well and wrote two of the songs, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And I think one of his songs, or he actually, his music is all over the world. 99 and a half won't do is one of the ones that was one of his big songs. And yeah, we played that, and yeah, he actually was my cousin's um, boyfriend at the time, and so we were all very close, and we would all go music shopping and look at keyboards together and go to rehearsal halls together. And we actually even started rehearsing at Leon Haywood's studio, where Michael brought in his gospel singers. And Michael Michael was a stickler. He was a lot like Bootsy, and he would just make them do it over and over and over and over again until it sounded like one person singing. So you can imagine being in a session watching Bootsy Collins um, direct the Funky Horns with Maceo Parker, Fred, and some of the other guys. I forget some of the other guys' names, but I mean, I felt sorry for him. He made him do it so many. Just it sounded good to me, but he wanted everybody to sound like one instrument was playing in unison, and that means that they were so tight. So that was really something to see, to be in that session that day, and I got a chance to meet them all. Very, 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 very high quality musicians. Yeah,
I know you mentioned that song 99 and a half won't do because me growing up in the church, we had a youth choir and they had the chorus, kept on running and running until I make 100. 99 and a half won't do. I remember that.
exactly.
You brought
Yeah.
that up. I was like,
Oh
oh.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
I remember
Oh
that
yeah.
song because I was in church and, we had a youth choir in the church. So,
Yep.
most of my congregation, they're not into that contemporary gospel. They're like, old school,
Right.
Shirley Caesar
Inspirational.
or
Right.
or
More so.
Thomas Dorsey, more so,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they weren't ready for that uplifting thing like when Edwin Hawkins brought in the birth of contemporary gospel and that paved the
Exactly.
way for the Winans and Hezekiah Walker and Kirk
Yep.
Franklin and Mary Mary, just to name a few. But
Right.
we have like a continental divide. So it's like saying you have traditional on this side and contemporary on the other side. You know the old saying, you can't please everybody. You know,
Right.
it's
Nope.
something that moves
Can't.
you. That's very important. Now, before you got your big break in the music industry, did you had any day jobs? And if so, what was your first day job?
Well, here, Sam. I wouldn't say that anything's been a big break. I've had little breaks here and there, and little successes. And as you go through the little successes, in your life, and you're able to look back at what you've done, yeah, yeah, you have to pat yourself on the back and give yourself credit because you did those things. And I've had a lot of little successes. I wouldn't say that I've had any big breaks, but um, basically, I've been chipping away at my craft and writing and producing music since the '80s in South Central Los Angeles. And yeah, I still work a 9 to 5 now. I am I'm a machinist. I'm a CNC machinist, and I am very very happy. Work for a great company, and yeah, and I'm able to do my music on the side, and I'm very very happy with that.
Speaking of companies, let's talk about your production company, Whole Spectrum Productions. And no, this is not about Spectrum. To my audience out there, they probably think Spectrum was part of like Time Warner Cable Spectrum. No, not that Spectrum. We're talking about a different kind of spectrum. That's Whole Spectrum Productions. Please share with our audience about what your company is all about.
Whole Spectrum was obviously started. My last name is Whole, and Whole Spectrum is a play on words, that we cover. We try to cover the full spectrum of music, because I know so many types of musicians. I can reach out to them and can pull them into a session if we need them, whether it be classical, folk, whether it be bluegrass, whether it be blues, jazz, soul, R&B, hip hop. We're up to the task to be able to put that together. And basically, my company is a pre-production studio with tracking, mixing, and mastering capabilities. We produce sound recordings and write songs, jingles, or industrial music for companies, through a creative process, that we have put together, to create the best for our clients in the sound recording. And so it's very laid back here. like I said again, I can bring musicians in, and some of the best musicians here in Cleveland. All I have to do is call them, and just a lot of creativity that goes on here, and so we have a lot of fun with it. And we're not real expensive, and but again, whole spectrum on the other side for me, just myself, is all about trying to get into sync, to get my compositions that I've written myself into commercials, and possibly play in movies. Just like you had mentioned um, in your opening, that you really don't know where the music's going to come from or where they're going to pull from. They can pull from an album. They can have Hans Zimmer write a brand new composition and theme for the movie. You just don't know. And I'm looking for that opportunity. I just released Better Than a Ringtone, which I'm getting a lot of good feedback from. So, yeah.
Now, how long was your company in existence? How many years was your company had founded?
Well, we've actually been in existence for like since 2010. So I've been writing and been putting music out there since 2010. From my first project that I put out was the Aquarius project, where I have a lot of songs that are still out there. And it's something that's so wonderful about music is that it doesn't have really a timeline on it, because it's music is timeless. I think the only thing you can put a timeline on is the artist that possibly covered that song or actually first sang it. Then it brings you back, but the music itself is timeless. And so I feel real good about stuff I listen to all the time that I did back then, and it sounds brand new to me. You know what I mean? It's just how music is. Once it's put into a sound recording, it's timeless. So I'm real happy about that. Yeah, but 2010 is when Whole Spectrum got going, I would say.
You mentioned Better Than a Ringtone, and I know Janice Purnell had brought that to my attention. She emailed me about it and CC'd you. Now, I got a chance to listen to that, and yeah, that could have been a good commercial jingle either for Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile or Apple. So to me, when you hear that R&B or soulful jingle in there, to me growing up, I'll be watching all the public affairs programs. If it's like something for the black community, they will play that for that session, for that time, for that commercial. It's like in different black news programs as well as for Latino or Native American audience. Depending on the commercial jingle, it could be used for that one. Especially like for the whole America, it kind of like maybe work, maybe not. But as I mentioned, it could work like for like a public affairs program or any sports specials that has with a black audience appeal. And everything, it depends on the consumer. If you have like a black audience that would listen to that commercial tone, they say like, "Hey, let's go to Verizon. Let's pick that up." Because I have my Verizon phone, and I still got my flip phone. I still have it up to date. Well, it just attracts the consumer, especially when you have in a black audience that will work for them. So they will probably hear that commercial and probably say, "Hey, let's go to Verizon. Let's pick it up. Let's subscribe, etc., etc." And that will
Absolutely.
probably work in that thing. Now,
Absolutely. That's it.
while you're doing jingles, as I've seen you doing TV themes on tour. Did you get a chance to meet some of the jazz musicians that did some TV themes? Because me growing up,
Yeah.
I can see all the credits. All the jazz musicians, they did some TV themes, like
Oh,
one called.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Bill Green. My godfather introduced me to Bill Green. They were really good friends, and my godfather was best friends with my dad. And so, like I said again, my dad was tied into a group of Los Angeles top Los Angeles's top jazz musicians. So when I was 22, my godfather Manuel Dumini brought me over to meet Bill at his studio, and I had to audition. You had to be able to play good enough for him to be able to accept you as one of his students. So I had picked out a song that I had practiced by Leslie Bird, Opus de Funk, or Opus de Jazz, excuse me. It was recorded in the 60s. It's one of the cuts. So I learned that, played it by heart to him, and he was sitting down. He was actually, when I did my audition, Jeff Clay Jeff Claiborne was there, and Jeff was an upcoming jazz saxophonist, and I had heard about him, and he was in session with Bill at the time. But yeah, Bill played with George Bohannon. I mean, some of the biggest jazz musicians back then. Bill was he was a Trojan. He was the guy. Yeah, up there with Miles Davis, and Bill was the business. When you said Bill Green's name, people knew. And matter of fact, there's a commercial out that I saw him on, and they got a saxophonist playing in the corner. It might even be a pharmaceutical uh, commercial, but I immediately recognized because that's in movies. He's actually in movies too, in bar scenes playing the saxophone. So yeah, Bill was used a lot for that. Buddy Collette, who taught me. I just was with I went to a couple sessions with him, and he used to play at Yamashiro's all the time. But yeah, Buddy played in commercials as well. Um, I met Gerald Wilson, Gerald Wilson's big band, Gerald Wilson, the big band jazz band guy, at the Ford Theater backstage with my uncle who knew him and brought me back there to meet him. And something that he told me was is that I told him that I was a musician and I really enjoyed his concert, and he said, all musicians have something to say. So I guess what he was trying to say to me at that point was is that he appreciates the ad lib, if you will. He appreciates um, individualistic solo, you know, and because it comes from a person's soul. It comes from them, but obviously to be able to play at that level, you have to have some technical skill as well. So yeah. So absolutely, I absolutely have been in the mix with those guys, and I know that they've played on lots of. Matter of fact, uh, Bill Green, the Taxi theme. Remember that one?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, because.
Well, Bill was the one. He played his tuner on no his recorder, excuse me, on that.
Uh-huh.
And he actually pulled, he says, he says, here, I played that on this. I said, what?
Hmm.
So after he showed me that, I got mine up here somewhere. But
Hmm.
I used to practice and play that, and it's really something, to see somebody. So I've had
Wow.
a lot of um, good what do you call it? Drive from these guys, from these human beings who were super jazz musicians. It's in me. So
You mentioned Miles Davis a little earlier, and I'm going to bring up Miles Davis for a minute. I was watching the reboot of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, aired on NBC, and that was 1985-86 season. And I was watching the episode called Prisoners that had the late Yaphet Kotto and Christina Rains. And then when I was finishing watching the episode, I was watching the credits, and then Miles Davis's name popped up. And I said, wow, Miles Davis did the episode music for that story? I was like, wow.
right,
And it's the first
right,
time I've seen his name up because he did the music for that episode. And
right.
you mentioned the theme from Taxi, Bob James. And, to those
Bob
of our
James. Yep.
audience out there, the name of the song is called Angela, but we know it
Mm,
as the theme from Taxi. So,
nice.
once again, when we hear that theme song, as I said earlier, when you hear that theme song, you never know. It may be a hit on Billboard's Hot 100 singles charts. And I was coming home from the circus. We was listening to WOTW FM back in 1985, and they were playing the theme from Taxi. And it was like, Taxi? And they played the whole 4 minute and 35 seconds of that whole theme song. I was like, wow, I didn't know that. But like I
Wow.
said earlier, you never know if any of our favorite TV themes or movie themes may be a top 10 hit on the radio.
Right.
And, lo and
You
behold,
don't
you
know.
never know.
You don't know.
And
You don't.
it's something like that. I wanted to mention you some of the other names that they played in jazz, but they play a part in television too. The late Bob O'Donnell. Not it's a O apostrophe Donough. And he
Hmm.
was the one behind Schoolhouse Rock on ABC Saturday morning, along with
Yeah.
Grady Tate and Blossom Dearie, because it was on. It's just like the news brief for kids that came on from 25 and 55 of the hour on Saturday morning, and it was from 1972 to 1985. And at the end, like around 12:30, before the cartoon signed off on ABC, they would show all the credits of all of the 3 minute clips that came on during that hour. So they would show all the songs, who the producer, who wrote it, and I mentioned the names Bob O'Donnell, Grady Tate, Blossom Dearie, just to name a few. They would sing those songs. So again,
Yep. I love
we
those
always have
songs.
to.
I love them. Matter of fact,
Mm-hmm,
um, David Jones owned a publishing company, music in California. He was working with them. I think he was trying to buy the publishing for the Schoolhouse Rock, and that was back in the was it the late early 2000s is when that was happening. But yeah, Schoolhouse Rock, that was big. That was really
mm-hmm,
big. It was amazing.
yeah.
It really was.
And
I
not only,
you know Capitol bit was it Capitol Hill? I'm just a bill
yeah,
on Capitol Hill.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far on Capitol Hill. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
those things. And
Yep.
they
Yep.
had that exhibit at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum in Cleveland. I got a chance
Wow.
to see that section, that we're talking about right now, of TV themes that,
Yeah.
made a hit on radio,
That's
and Schoolhouse Rock too.
yeah.
So they had a little exhibit. I took a picture of that and I said, hey, here's some of my favorite Schoolhouse Rock. I made it right there.
Absolutely. No doubt.
So,
No doubt.
it's just like that and everything. Now, who were some of the performers that you got along with, whether it's in studio or on stage or off stage?
Well, you know, I I would get along with everybody. I mean, I got along with everybody on our gigs. I guess um, when you're on, when you're gigging, you tend to gravitate towards the person that you you get along with. You try to go and say hi to everybody, make sure everybody is okay. Everybody's in good spirits. Nobody's having any technical difficulties. And everybody's on the same page as far as just what's next. What's on the playlist. So, but yeah, I used to get along with everybody. As far as when I used to go on tour, I not tour, when I would play with. I got to be careful about that word. Um, Michael Trammell and Blessed. Michael would be kind of tensed up a little bit because he's the headliner and he's the main guy. So you know when you're the main guy like that, sometimes you can't relax, but you would still, hey Mike, you okay? But they that's how some people roll. Some people roll like that.
Mm.
But yeah,
Mhm.
I try to
Now,
stay calm.
living.
So I try to stay calm myself. I try to
Oh,
just
okay.
you know try to get in my happy place and get ready for the next
Right,
playlist.
right. Now, living or dead, who were some of the musicians that you wish you wanted to meet in doing commercial jingles as well as movie and TV themes?
Yes, yes, yes. Who did Back on the Block again? Who
Quincy
produced?
Jones.
Yes,
Yeah,
that Quincy Jones.
Quincy
Definitely
Jones.
Quincy. Quincy was one of my all-time. I got a chance to meet him. We were passing, and I got a chance to meet him. I didn't have my cassette tape on him, but I shook his hand. He was very nice. In Century City, back in
Mm.
I think it was right around 1980, if I'm not mistaken, right around that time. But
Mhm.
yeah, I would have loved. He's the main guy. I would have loved to have done something with Quincy Jones. That would have been. That's it right there, Quincy.
Yeah. Well, Quincy did it all. Not only he produced some jazz artists for upcoming artists, as well as producing for Michael Jackson's LP, but he's best known for doing motion picture scores as well as TV themes. He did the score
Right,
for In the Heat of the Night, starring Sidney Poitier. Also, In Cold Blood, starring Robert Blake, and The Color Purple, starring comedian Whoopi Goldberg. And also, he did some TV themes, a theme from Ironside for NBC, and Sanford and Son, also for NBC. And he was the executive producer, for The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, also on NBC, and Mad TV for Fox. So Quincy Jones is all around, whatever project that he can get his hands on, that's his signature trademark right there. Okay, now here on my Black Soul Music Experience podcast, I always ask my guests who is the top 10 R&B musicians of all time. But since I have my guest, we're going to be doing the top 10 musicians and singers who did jingles as well as movie and TV themes. So, since I brought up Quincy Jones, I'm going to put him on the list because
he's
he
he's on
did
my list.
movies.
He's on my
Oh,
list.
on your list too. All right. So we're tied. So
Okay.
Quincy Jones, he's there. He did all of the movie and TV themes and everything else. Now, what is your favorite? Well,
Well, like I said, he's my favorite. I think I would have to go to uh, Barry White next. Barry White, Barry Manilow, um, Billy Joel.
mhm.
Um, Billy Joel is amazing. Um, what is it? Benny and the Jets. What's the guy who did that?
Sir Elton John, Benny and the
Sir
Jets.
Elton John. You gotta
Number
put
one
Elton
hit,
John in there.
number one hit back in 1974. And that song was later sampled by Mary J. Blige. Because when you hear that background, say, wait a minute, that's Benny and the Jets. Mary J.
Exactly.
Blige sampled it. I got both versions. I got Sir Elton John's original, and Mary J. Blige just sampled one. So
You
Sir
know it.
Elton
You
John.
know it.
You know it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's Stevie Wonder. I'm not sure
Uh-huh.
if he did anything. Are you familiar with Charles Mingus,
Charles Mingus, yes. When I was
the bass
at
player?
WVOX, I was playing,
Yeah.
yeah, the big bass player. Yes.
And
Wednesday
genius,
night prayer meeting.
genius,
Yes.
genius, genius,
Mm-hmm.
musical genius. That's all I gotta
Yes.
say.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure whether he
And
did any jingles. I'm
I don't think
some
so.
of his
I
music
don't
was
think
used.
so.
No,
No. No, I think most of his songs were either maybe used for movies and stuff like that.
right,
Because when I
right,
was interviewing Janice Purnell, we talked about who did the real music scores and who was the music supervisor. So
right,
when we just brought up Charles Mingus, you never know. Many they would use his song for any movies. And when, at the end of the movie, I would look at the credits, who did what, who performed this, and who wrote this, what record label they were on. So, once again, as I said earlier, as a consumer, I always stay until the end and look at the credits, and then we find out who did the music, who provided the music for that movie, and so on and so on.
right.
And also I got to put in Isaac Hayes. He did the theme from Shaft,
Exactly, Isaac.
number
Exactly.
one hit
Right.
on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts. Offers were pouring in. He
That's
did
it.
the theme song for the ABC TV series The Men, and he did some acting. He was in an episode of Rockford Files, and of course the A Team and Hunter, and yes, South Park with those
Really,
rowdy, yeah, South Park. He supplied the voice of Chef.
really.
If you go
Wow.
to YouTube, you type in South Park, and you'll probably listen to one of the episodes. It's like, wait a minute, ain't that Isaac Hayes playing the voice of Chef in the school cafeteria man? And I was like,
Wow.
oh, that was Isaac Hayes.
Wow.
Wow,
Wow.
and
That's
he did
amazing.
that.
That's amazing, Sam.
Yeah. And also, I don't want to leave out some of the other jazz musicians that did some TV themes.
How about
Oliver
Herbie Hancock?
Nelson, yes, Herbie Hancock. He
Actually,
supplied the
I
music.
met Herbie. I've been to Herbie's house. I met him as well.
Uh
So
huh.
yeah, yeah, nice guy, very nice. But yeah, he's also probably one of the best jazz pianists that's ever lived.
Yeah.
For his style and his creative style that he actually created his own style out there. Yeah. So yeah, what
Right.
did
And
he do anything
also,
you know about?
yes, he did the movie score for the movie Death Wish, the original Death Wish. It starred the late
Huh.
Charles Bronson. So when I looked at the movie credits,
I met Charles Bronson as well.
yes, and
I've
he
got some
also
stories.
oh, and he also did the movie score for the movie Colors that came out in
Wow.
1988 that starred Robert
Okay.
Duvall and Sean Penn and Maria Conchita Alonso. So
Okay.
he did the music for those two. And I don't
Nice.
want to leave out some of the others like Oliver Nelson. He did the TV score for the $6 Million Man on ABC that
Really?
starred Lee Majors. Yes.
Okay.
And of course, Dave Grusin. He did
Dave Grusin.
TV theme for The Name of the Game on NBC and Good Times for CBS. So, like I said, I look at the credits as like, oh, Dave Grusin did the theme for Good
Right.
Times. All that
Right.
time, watching him, all the reruns, theme of the name of the game, and so on and so on. So,
Name of the game. Right.
yep. So when you see these jazz musicians, not only they do their theme, but they also do stuff for TV themes and so on. And of course the
And that
late Burt, yes, and the late Burt Bacharach. I don't want to leave him out. He did the song called Nikki, and he
hmm,
dedicated that song to his daughter who had some mental issues. But that song was later used for the ABC movie of the week. So when I was at Barnes and Noble in Manhattan, I was just messing around with some of the CDs and you can browse, and I was just playing that song, and I was like,
hmm.
wait a minute, that that's the theme from the ABC movie of the week. I keep saying to myself, didn't ABC reach out to Burt Bacharach and they can use that theme for permission? I was like, wait a minute, that's the same melody that they
Right.
used. I was like, man, wow.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting. How about
yeah.
Mancini?
Henry Mancini, yeah, the Pink
Henry
Panther,
Mancini. Did you know?
you
Did you
know.
know that he was a? Did you know he was originally his main axe was a flute like me. He was a flute player. And I met Chris Mancini, his son, when I went there for an audition to Arista Records back in 1983. I had
Mhm.
some tracks that I had just produced and brought them over, and they were considering me as one of their artists at the time. And he had told me about his dad, and I was like, wow. And the reason why I brought it up is because when after listening to my music, he could tell that I wrote from a C on the scale, from a C scale, um,
Mhm.
like his dad did, like Henry did, writing starting from a C major, if you will. And that's
Wow.
he could hear it, and I'm like, wow, okay. And but that was interesting. In Henry Mancini, that was something I always kind of held close to my
Wow.
heart when he told me that. That was pretty deep. But yeah,
Wow.
Henry Mancini was what the Black Panther you said, or the Pink
The Pink
Panther?
Panther. Yeah, the Pink
Yeah,
Panther, the
I
movie
I played a lot
version
of
with
that on my tenor sax. I used to love to play that on my tenor sax. Fa-bam, fa-bam,
da
fa-bam, fa-bam,
da da
fa-bam,
da da
fa-bam,
da da da
fa-bam. Yeah.
da.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
cause I be watching the cartoon version on NBC Saturday morning, but I never knew that would be the movie version would start the late Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau. But I only knew it from NBC Saturday morning with the cartoons. And not only that, he did the theme for the NBC mystery movie, Columbo and McCloud, Macmillan and Wife, those themes that he does
That's
every
big.
Sunday night. And of
That's
course,
big.
Remington Steele for NBC and The Blue Knight for CBS. So we don't want to leave him out because he plays everything.
Yes, he does.
Mhm.
You're a music encyclopedia, aren't you?
Hey, like I said earlier, I look at the credits. I don't
Right,
just be
right.
picking up the remote control and go like that. Back in the
No,
day,
I get you.
you just
I
I
get you.
said, "All right, Sam, go change the channel." I said, "But wait a minute, I want to check out who was the guest on the show and who
Right.
did what and things like that." So,
Gotcha.
as to me, I wanted to look at everything from beginning to the end. Who was the star of the show? Who was the guest on the show? Who did what behind the scenes? I look at the technical director, casting, the music, and stuff like that. Who's it made by? Because
Right.
when it gets to VHS back then, and then DVD, and now streaming on YouTube and all the other networks. If you missed that episode, you can go to their website and stuff. That's me growing up because I always like to look who is it made by. You know, if it's in the movies, was it made by Paramount or Columbia or Universal? On TV, we know it's aired on ABC or CBS or NBC. But do you know who was originally made by once it gets to all of the networks? So that's me growing up, and everything. And I'll look at PBS because, when you look at Sesame Street, you'll see all of, major, who did the music, who did the
Right,
theme
right,
for
right,
that,
right.
and so on and so
Exactly.
on. 'Cause,
Right.
that's me growing up. I always like
That's
to look at these things
right.
and find out who's the original, who's it made by, because I have my Billboard books and it tells me who was the artist, the name of the song, the LP, what original record label was it on. Because when I go to these record shops back then, when you see some of the record companies, or if the record company went out of business or merged or sold to some other companies, that we don't even know who's the original record label. We just know by the reissues, but we don't know the original reissues. So that's me
Wow.
growing up. I always look at some of the original stuff before it either got merged or sold into other companies.
Gotcha.
So that was me going up.
Oh, that's it. That's you growing up, and that's you right now too, man.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, Lou, thank you so much for being here on my Black Soul Music Experience podcast. It's been a pleasure
Yes,
chatting
sir.
with you. And again, special shout
Yeah,
out to Ms. Janice Purnell for recommending
absolutely,
you to be on my show. Thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Just
Continued
wanna just want to
success.
put something in here real good, real quick here for you, Sal.
Yes.
www.reverbnation.com/Lou Flute. Check my music out. Better than a ringtone. Get it right. Extraordinary people, and quite a few other cuts on there. I write music by the project. You give me a theme, give me an idea. I can write the music to it.
Okay, that's rebirth.com. Okay.
ReverbNation.com.
Re-
www.reverbnation.com/Lou, Lou, flute, Flute.
okay, we'll mention that. All
Thanks,
right,
Sam.
ladies and gentlemen. Yes, download all of the artists that we have talked about today on music or TV themes or jingles that we talked about on this episode of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Visit iTunes.com, Spotify.com, or purchase a CD at Amazon.com. And make sure you look for Lou's website. It's reverb.com/Lou. Lou Flute. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see or hear this episode, please subscribe by going to riverside.fm/studio/Samuel Wilson Jr. Don't forget to add the S at the end, dash studio. And make sure you subscribe. We're going to be posting this episode. Go to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And I'll be posting this episode streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thank you for joining me as I close out this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience. Well, that's about it for this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. Thank you for joining me, and please tune in next week for an all-new episode. The Black Soul Music Experience podcast is sponsored by the support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe by going to riverside.fm/studio/Samuel Wilson Jr.'s studio. And don't forget to check out my audio podcast episodes by becoming a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. You can leave your feedbacks, comments, and replies by visiting my Facebook homepage. Go to facebook.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. You can also tweet me on X, aka Twitter, at Sam Wilson Jr. 66. As always, parting, remember this: reach for the top, and your dreams will come true, and it can happen to you. From all of us, take care. God bless. Thanks for listening. Have a good week, and please be safe.